For this particular series, that is our best lineup, against these guys.
Fake three, Curry's good! Dazzling moves to get free with two defenders there. Green defends Durant, who puts up a 20-footer.
Please. No one on earth is going to stop that.
He's Kevin, so he's going to score. We know he's going to score, but he does so much more to impact the game. It's the block shots, the rebounds, the assists.
Oh, look at this! Up high and Greentown hard.
He's an all-star for a reason, and he's really good. And kind of a point guard at the center or forward position.
Thompson catches, fires three. Mooney, three, Thompson again. Oh, he has a flamethrower.
Klay Thompson with back-to-back threes here in this third quarter, putting on a shooting clinic.
When we needed Kevin to get buckets, he did that. When we needed Steph to control the offense, he did that. Klay got going. Andre started off the game. I think he had maybe the first 5 or 6 points.
Into Green, into Iguodala. Andre can still fly with the best of them.
And what makes Andre special is, when you combine that athleticism with that brain, now you got a hell of a player.
Very efficient offense from the Warrior starters. Everyone scoring in double figures. Everyone at least 15-plus points in that Hamptons 5 starters.
When it's just one guy scoring or two guys, it allows the defense to kind of key on those guys. But when it's balanced like it was tonight, we're pretty tough to stop.
Well, looky here, as you heard Kevin Harlan reference, beginning of that piece there, for the first time this season, we saw the Hamptons 5 lineup start, and look what they did. Each one of them in not only double figures, but each one of them scoring over 15 points, and obviously all of them a plus in the plus-minus if you're into that sort of thing in the NBA box score. Bring back in Grant Hill and Mike Fratello to talk about this series, and here's the good news here. The NBA has rescinded this technical foul that Ed Malloy handed out, not only to great Draymond Green, but to Nene last night. Had Draymond not gotten that tech rescinded, he would have been up to 4. And remember, in the NBA playoffs, if you get 7, you are automatically suspended. So Draymond now back down to 3 technical fouls and now 4 away from a suspension.
You probably need to realize that the reason the NBA, I think, did this today is because officials will use that double technical as a way of them trying to get control of the game. Mm-hmm. But to use it in the playoffs when you have a suspension looming if a player builds up X number of technical fouls is a severe penalty. So they might be just trying to control the game themselves by saying tech on both of you for looking at each other the wrong way. But in reality, do you give a guy a technical foul for that? Right. And I think the league looked at it and went, those guys didn't do anything to deserve a technical, so nice job by the league.
Yeah, that's why there's that checks and balance system in place the day after where the league has the ability to do that. But Draymond and everybody, for the most part, seemed to behave themselves last night. The conversation wasn't about the officials. But how good, listen, the game itself was weird with Curry's injury and Harden's injury. But once we got down to actual basketball, Draymond was sensational. A story coming out that he's lost 20 pounds since the All-Star break, in the best shape he's been in with lack of injuries in years. Goes out 15 points, 12 rebounds, 7 assists last night.
Yeah, one of his best games that I can recall in a long time. I mean, this year Draymond has not been as productive throughout the regular season as in years past. But it's like he's locked in, he's focused now. Even in the Clippers series, I thought his energy level was really through the roof. But, Draymond and then also, Andre Iguodala, the two of them.
They turned back the clock.
They really did. And I think, maybe it's intentional. Maybe they kind of just sort of pace themselves to be at this moment now where they can be at their best. Klay, Steph, and KD, that's pretty much been them all year. But if you get the other two playing well and contributing like that, you feel bad for Houston and any team that has to go against them, because on offense and on defense, as good as any lineup, starting 5 in the NBA.
Well, let's turn our attention to the Rockets here, and a report came out this afternoon from ESPN that the Rockets are optimistic that Harden will not have any negative impacts from the eye injury that he suffered in Game 2. Remember, he said at the post-game podium He had trouble seeing even the stat sheet last night. Clearly the lights and the colors were bothering him. But look at the regular season versus what's happened to the first 2 games here, Coach Fratello. James Harden always seems to have trouble against the Warriors. Now listen, everybody has trouble, but we're talking about a guy who's the reigning MVP and is in contention for another MVP this year.
Well, one thing the Warriors do have when they start this team is 4 players that can go out and defend you. So if they decide they want to switch on any of this stuff, keep this in mind. Curry is the only guy out of that starting 5 that you might say, he doesn't defend anybody. And he tries. He gets his hands in on deflections and steals. But Green, Iguodala, Durant, okay, blocking shots and rebounding the ball, and then Thompson, those are 4 really good defenders. So when they switch one guy off of you and the next guy takes you, it's probably another good defender. It's a problem.
Throw in Livingston off the bench who gets some minutes there too.
Didn't mention him, okay? I'm trying to stick with the Hampton 5.
It seemed like Capella had some trouble getting into this series last night, fellas. The Rockets seem to be better with him off the court, but how do you keep him off the court when he's your main guy in that pick and roll with either Harden or Chris Paul?
Well, it's tough. I mean, it is tough, and I think because of we think last year and Capella made an impact in that that 7-game series between the Rockets and the Warriors. But one of the folks that was the individuals that was out of the playoffs last year nursing an injury at that time was Iguodala.
Right.
And as we were talking about his presence defensively, his basketball IQ, his willingness to get after it, you can really switch now. And the switching now, it messes up their pick and roll offense now, because you can't. So much of their offense is predicated off that roll. Capella rolling hard and forcing the weak side to make a decision, and then Harden being able to make the right reads. But when you switch, if Capella doesn't go and post up, which is really not his game, he's not getting those roll opportunities and finishing at the rim. And it's really putting all the onus and pressure on James Harden or Chris Paul in the pick and roll to go one-on-one and make a play for themselves. And it's tough when you have capable defenders, 4 quality defenders who can guard multiple positions like Golden State has.
Just quickly going back to the Utah series, the way Utah guarded Harden by playing him from behind and chasing him into Gobert. But when Gobert stepped up, who's the guy that's there, either for an offensive rebound or the lob pass? Capella. Well, Golden State played it a little bit differently last night.
No question. Let's switch gears to the other game we saw last night, which was the number 1 seed in the whole NBA, the Bucks evening up the series with the Boston Celtics. What a turn of events, huh? Blowout by Boston in game 1, then the Bucks respond by blowing out the Celtics. It was Kyrie Irving's worst game as a Celtic, statistically. And we look at Giannis, the response here, Coach, from Giannis last night after he said he needed to play harder, he needed to play better after the way he played on Sunday.
Look at those numbers up there. He made the same number of field goals, 7, but 7 for 21 in game 1, 7 for 16 in game 2, because he went to the free throw line and shot 18 free throws. You have 18 turnovers along with 18 free throws, and the offensive rebounds that they came up with, same number, 18. You're doomed for destiny.
And it didn't hurt that the supporting cast really stepped up. Middleton and Bledsoe combined for 49 points, 10 threes. Middleton had 7 of those threes. But on the other side, there was no response here. Kyrie Irving, who was so sensational in game 1, then after game 2 said, listen, this is why they brought me here. I've got to step up. He shouldered the blame for how the team came out and played last night.
Yeah, it shows a lot of maturity. I mean, that's what you want from your best player, your leader. Kyrie's won championships. A lot of noise this year, a lot of unusual post-game press conferences from Kyrie, but by owning his play and taking the onus and responsibility, it takes a lot of the pressure off the rest of his guys. And look, Kyrie, his worst game thus far in the postseason this year, and maybe one of his worst games in the postseason in a very long time. But you got to give credit to Milwaukee. I mean, Milwaukee, I thought, did a pretty good job switching defensively and really aggravating Kyrie, double and at times triple teaming him, not letting him beat them like he did in game 1. And so it'll be interesting to see what adjustments Brad Stevens makes and if Kyrie can, obviously be more effective and efficient at home.
Still got more as we get you set for game 2 out in Denver tonight between the Blazers and the Nuggets. When we come back, the other Eastern Conference semifinal, we'll talk about the Sixers and the Raptors as they get set to resume the series tomorrow night in Philly. Looking to get even. Tonight, Damian Lillard and the Blazers enter the Pepsi Center down 1-0, and including the regular season, have lost 7 of 8 to the Nuggets. Blazers are going to need to find a way to slow down the Joker. Nikola Jokic burned Portland for 37 in Denver's Game 1 victory. Welcome on in, Studio B here in Atlanta. This is Game Time. Tip-off in the Mile High City just over 1 hour from now. We've got the Hall of Famer, Grant Hill. Got the 1986 Coach of the Year, the Czar himself, Mike Fratello. I'm Jared Greenberg. We're getting you set for Game 2 of Round 2 between the Nuggets and the Blazers. Take you back to Monday night. Lillard did his part, 39.6 assists. However, his 6 turnovers contributed to a team-wide issue, which we will be breaking down shortly ahead of tonight's Game 2. Murray to Jokic happened quite often in Game 1. Murray had 8 assists, while Jokic dropped 37 and 9, all part of a filthy tear put together by the MVP candidate of late. Monday, Jokic joined only Steph Curry in the 29 postseason with a game of at least 37 points, 9 rebounds, and 6 assists. Quick turnaround to tonight's Game 2. However, Terry Stotts says his best player is up for the challenge.
As a leader, I've said this before, I don't know all the players in the league, but I think he's the best star leader in the league. He leads by example. He cares about his teammates. He cares about the right things. He's great in the community. I'm glad he's getting acknowledged now for the things that he's been doing for a long time.
You grow up watching the NBA, you see superstars, and you kind of always think maybe they're destined for it, and it's just kind of what they were going to always be. But this is one of the hardest workers I've ever seen. So there's just no secret to it.
He doesn't have to score 30 plus for us to win, but you know, when he's efficient scoring the ball and other players are stepping up, you know, we can win games that way too.
How crucial would it be to steal one here and take it back to Portland?
It'll be huge to go back home with the series even. You know, we would be taking away home court. So considering how well we've played at home, you know, I think that would be to our advantage, and it would be great to even it up here and, you know, put that pressure on them.
All right, so that's some sound leading up to game number 2 tonight, which you'll see on TNT coming up just after 9 o'clock Eastern. Coach, let's start here with Portland, and we know how great of a leader everybody says that Damian Lillard is. Not sure how much more they need from him on the offensive end, but what'd you see from him in game 1 in particular, where he put up 37?
He obviously understands the amount of pressure that he is under to try to get this team a win and then obviously build on that. I think he's been simply sensational. I think everything he says and does in leading this team is about as good as you can be. I think he's got an even perspective on what the series is all about. He understands that they're shorthanded. We all understand this is a guard-oriented team that's missing its starting center. The replacement, Cantor, has come in and done a decent job. Has a dislocated shoulder, but it's the other 2 starters that have to come up with more than a combined 4 points.
Yeah, we'll get into all that here. In terms of Lillard, he kind of embraces this role, this underdog role where he doesn't have all of his parts, but he can carry a squad on his back.
Yeah, you know, and Terry Stotts talked about it as a coach, the mentality, you know, being the underdog, but still feeling like, look, I'm not going to be denied. I'm not going to make excuses. He has the ability, as we've seen thus far, to really will his team with his play, with his leadership. Just as even that last shot, that we go back to that series against OKC, I mean, just the reaction after the shot, and the coolness under pressure, the audacity to take that shot. But no, I mean, he's been spectacular. And we've talked so much about Jokic, and rightfully so, but he's been as good and as dominant as any player in the postseason thus far. And I anticipate him coming out again and being dominant. The question is, who's going to help him along the way here in game 2?
Well, let's go to that then. Let's talk about what happened. You referenced that 2 of the starters combined for 4 total points in Aminu and Harkless. Now, granted, both of those had a tall task in what they had to do defensively. Terry Stotts went to some unconventional lineups in game 1, but no matter what, you can't just get 4 points from 2 of your starters.
No, I mean, you've been placed in a position of being one of the best 5 players on the team in all probability, and as a result of that, they're expecting you to make contributions, and you can't put everything on Lillard, you can't put everything on McCollum, and particularly with Cantor having the load that he has to guard at the other end of the floor, how much do you want to get out of him? And these two young men, I would expect tonight, would really bounce back and give them much better games than they got in game number one. I was thinking about Lillard before, and the fact that this guy is playing with a chip on his shoulder from the years that he has been slighted and not been put on the All-Star team, where he feels he's got this confidence, this quiet confidence about himself. And the years that he did not make the All-Star team, that hurt that young man.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he's showing it now. I want to show you just how good I really am.
Turnovers is going to be another thing here for Portland, right? They had 18, 23 of those 23 points came off the turnovers for Denver in game one.
Yeah, I mean, you're on the road in the playoffs against a very good team in Denver. You can't have that many turnovers, and that was a little bit uncharacteristic for Portland. Have to value the basketball, and these turnovers, sort of live ball opportunities. Denver was able to get out and convert off of those turnovers in their game, 23 points off of the 18 turnovers from Portland. So valuing the basketball in addition to getting somebody to step up. But I'll say this, look, Cantor actually did a pretty good job, and we've talked so much about who's going to be that third guy to step up for Portland. And I actually felt like McCollum, I thought he did a good job there against Gary Harris, but then once they changed the lineups, he struggled there in the second half. Yeah. So he's got to be good. And I just thought McCollum was okay. I think his ceiling is higher, and I expect him to bounce back and have a better game in game two.
16 points for TJ, just 7 of 17 from the field in game one. Listen, you can score all the points you want, but if you can't stop the Joker, then you have an issue. Let's turn to the other side of the basketball here with what Jokic has done here, Grant. I mean, he has been on a historic tear. Granted, the MVP votes have been cast. The postseason play has nothing to do with the regular season MVP. But if anybody had any doubts as to why he was in the conversation, we're seeing it over the first round and now bleeding into the second round of the playoffs. 25
points, 11.8 rebounds, 8.8 assists per game. The only other player to reach these marks in a single postseason is Oscar Robertson, who did it in 1963. So Oscar obviously was a point guard. Jokic is a point center, if that's possible. But, I'm not sure you can stop him. I mean, I think he's just been that dominant, that good, so crafty. The offense that Malone has sort of structured, where he's at the top there, the movement, the spacing, the shooting from the rest of his team that gives him opportunities. I mean, he can beat you with the pass. He can beat you with scoring. He makes the right read. I mean, just a joy to watch. I think for Portland, it's not about necessarily stopping him. It's just, can you contain the others? I mean, the other guy, Jamal Murray, is another guy who's, I might put like a Harkless on him, somebody a little taller, give him a little bit more height. But it can't be Jokic going off and having 2 or 3 other guys have big nights as well. That's a recipe for disaster for the Trailblazers.
You mentioned him in the same sentence with James Harden, and when you look back at that last box score, 11 of 18 from the floor in field goals, but the thing that reminds me of Harden, 12 for 12 at the free throw line. He's getting to the line a lot. He makes his free throws. That's a good thing.
Yeah, really good article written today on The Ringer about you can compare Jokic all you want to all these bigs, but his numbers so far in the playoffs mirror more like Harden and Steph Curry than they do some of your traditional bigs. We got plenty more on this game. Again, tip-off coming just after 9 Eastern on TNT. When we come back, we'll look back on Game 2 of the Dubs and the Rockets. Have the Dubs locked this one up? Plus,